The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff testified for 2 hours today about her handling of a 2018 misconduct complaint against the former top commander of the military. Katie Telford told the Defence Committee she took the complaint against General Vance seriously, but she insists that nobody knew what the complaint was actually about. The opposition is demanding to know why no one told the Prime Minister about the complaint 3 years ago.
We didn't even have a rumor to go on in this situation. I think there are ways to act and follow up on rumors. We knew that there was a complaint, period.
Who made the decision not to tell the Prime Minister?
I was learning about this complaint and I was immediately acting.
So
and
once
taking
you
it
learned
very
about
seriously.
the complaint, you had to make a decision to tell the Prime Minister or not. Who made
No,
the
actually,
decision?
I would remind you that I actually didn't learn about I knew nothing about the complaint. I knew that there was something that the ombudsperson said they have a complaint that they apparently couldn't work on.
When were you aware of the fact that the Minister of Defence refused to look at the evidence of this complaint that was offered by the Ombudsman?
The only reason I believe that you or any of us know what was in the envelope was because of the public reporting in March. And at the time, in March of 2021, just to be clear, in March of 2018, I was aware from the original brief, I believe, that I received on this, that there was an envelope. I had absolutely no idea what was in it.
For more on this, 3 of the MPs who participated in the hearing. Anita Vandenbeld is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. She joins us from Ottawa. James Bazan is the Conservative National Defence Critic. He joins us from Selkirk, Manitoba. And Randall Garrison is the NDP National Defence Critic. He joins us from Colwood, British Columbia. Thank you all for making the time. Ms. Vandenbeld, I'd like to start with you. Katie Telford says that nobody knew the substance of the complaint. That's the subject of these hearings. But she sought and received assurances from the PCO that there wasn't a safety concern here. How could she be assured there was no safety issue if people didn't know the substance of the complaint?
So I think what we saw today with Ms. Telford was the level of commitment to trying to get to the bottom of this. And in fact, what I understand is that when PCO came back and said that they couldn't get any information, they didn't. Mr. Walborn did not have the permission to be able to provide any details whatsoever, and that was reported back to her. She asked then PCO to get assurances from Mr. Walborn, and they did get assurances that at least there was no safety issue. Her words were that she wanted to make sure no one was in harm's way. And I think that even shows the level of commitment that even while respecting that the individual did not want their name or the nature of the allegation known, she still made sure that the person was okay and was safe. And I think that says a lot about the level of commitment and her sincerity. And also the fact that if there had been any way to get beyond that impasse, to any way to be able to get justice for this person, you could see today that everybody was committed to that, and unfortunately they reached an impasse.
Okay, so they got assurances through Mr. Walborn even if they didn't get specifics, but I want to draw your attention to an email that was brought up in committee today, and we've seen from March 2nd of 2018 where Janine Sherman, who is the PCO official tasked with looking into this, she makes a reference in emailing Mr. Walborn that she wants to talk to him about allegations of sexual harassment. This is March of 2018. A couple of weeks later, on the 16th, a briefing note for her saying you will be meeting with Mr. Walborn to discuss allegations of sexual harassment. If specifics weren't known, at least the nature of the complaint was known. This seems to contradict what Ms. Telford said today.
And I think there's a difference between known and presumed. And the only person at that point that Ms. Sherman had spoken to was Mr. Marquez. And
but why would they put it in writing if it's not known as opposed to presumed?
I think it's a natural thing when somebody says that there's an issue of misconduct. It's natural to presume. And in fact, what Mr. Marquez said was they did presume that it was the most serious kind of allegation and went forward on that assumption. But it's very different to know something and I think it's natural for people to assume that it could be that. And his exact words, if you look at the committee, was he was not told, but he said it could be in sexual nature. And obviously people then use shorthand. And if you notice that was a draft email, in the actual email, she didn't reference sexual harassment. But of course you have to act like it is. I mean, if you get an allegation like that, you have to move forward on the assumption that it is something like that. And even then, they weren't able to get anywhere because they didn't have any information, not even the name of the complaint.
I want to bring Mr. Bazan in here. Mr. Bazan, if you take Ms. Vandenbeld's argument that you have to presume the worst and act if it is in fact an allegation of a serious sexual misconduct, doesn't that mean you should tell the Prime Minister?
Well, we know from testimony from Gary Walborn that he told Minister Sagen that it was sexual misconduct. We know that Minister Sagen pushed away that evidence instead of acting upon it. We know that when he was contacted by the Prime Minister's office and the Privy Council office, that they were talking to him about, and he was surprised to find out that they knew about sexual misconduct allegations against General Vance. So today's testimony from Katie Telford confirmed that the Liberals are having a cover-up of sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. And today we asked over a dozen times, Katie Telford, who made the decision not to inform the Prime Minister, and why didn't she tell the Prime Minister on many different opportunities about these misconduct, as she described it, as serious misconduct allegations against General Vance. But instead, she allowed the Prime Minister to still put pen to paper, to give him a pay raise, to approve his pay at risk, to extend his contract, and left him in charge of Operation Honour, undermining the stomping out of sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. If she had nothing to hide, she would have answered those questions today. But instead, we got more obfuscation, we got more waffling, and unfortunately, this did nothing to enforce, the accountability within government. Nobody's taking responsibility here, whether it's Minister Sagen, Katie Telford, or Prime Minister Trudeau.
So, Mr. Bazan, you say, Prime Minister Trudeau did extend Mr. Vance. They did give him this raise, but he was appointed by Prime Minister Harper. And, we have had confirmation from your leader, Mr. O'Toole, that he was aware of allegations of some sort against Mr. Vance. I mean, it seems like there was a failure of due diligence here in a lot of cases spanning multiple governments. Is that not a fair assumption for people? Because all of this goes back well before 2018.
Well, let's look at the facts. 2015, there was actual allegations brought forward of fraternization against General Vance. That was investigated, and Prime Minister Harper actually met with General Vance to talk about it and was satisfied with the answers that General Vance gave. There was rumors that were heard that were then handed off to the National Security Advisor to confront General Vance about, and again, he was able to talk himself out of that. You fast forward to 2018, with all this already sitting in General Vance's personnel file, Minister Sagen's given hard evidence of sexual misconduct, and he pushes away the evidence with a complaint that is actually coming forward to make sure that the government was aware of it before they went ahead and provided any more bonuses and extensions of contracts to General Vance. But instead, what we got is a cover-up. They turned a blind eye and they dropped the ball.
Mr. Garrison, Ms. Telford was asked repeatedly who made the decision not to tell the Prime Minister. Repeatedly, she wouldn't really say, but I mean, the conclusion you draw from this is Mr. Sagen made a choice, the PCO made a choice, Ms. Telford made a choice, Elder Marcus made a choice, all not to tell the Prime Minister. Regardless of whether you know the nature of the allegation, the fact that there is an allegation against the Chief of Defence Staff, doesn't that warrant telling the Prime Minister simply from an issues management perspective that he should know what he could be facing?
Well, I think given the evidence we heard today, Canadians are going to continue to find it hard to believe that the Prime Minister did not know that there were serious allegations against General Vance. And the Liberals would like to continue to swirl around the procedural drain here of who passed the hot potato to who. But in the end, the Minister of Defence was offered concrete evidence of sexual misconduct by General Vance. There was no investigation and there were no consequences, and he remained in charge of Operation Honour, which was supposed to root out sexual misconduct for another 3 years. So unless somebody takes responsibility here, and unless there are consequences for senior leaders in the military who engage in sexual misconduct, any reforms going forward will be suspect.
Mr. Garrison, where do you think the committee hearings should go now? Is it time to move on to the report stage? Do you need to hear from more witnesses after this? Where do you think this should go in the next step of the process?
Well, I think we've heard what we need to hear, and that is that the Minister of Defence knew the nature of the allegations, the Prime Minister's office knew, the Prime Minister should have known, and therefore we can write a report and we can say what we could have said on speculation at the beginning that we know there was no action against General Vance.
Ms. Vandenbeld, I've seen you shaking your head a lot throughout this, so I do want to give you the last word because you are outnumbered. But I just based on everything you've heard today, how can you justify the Prime Minister not being informed? Whether you knew the nature of the complaint or not, whether you knew it was sexual or not, when there's an allegation against a person that important, doesn't the Prime Minister need to know?
I think what we're doing here, and I think it was very clear from Ms. Telford's testimony, is that we're applying hindsight. We know now, we've known since March this year, what the nature of those allegations were.
But these are people hired to make good judgment calls in the moment.
And actually, I think Mr. Wernick, the former clerk of the Privy Council, was right when he said everybody acted in good faith. And at the end of the day, I think the real takeaway here is that the complainant didn't feel that there was a safe and secure way to come forward and do an investigation. That is what we're focused on. That's what our committee should be focused on. Our next study is on military justice. I think that's going to be a key piece of this. We've brought in Madame Arbour and General Carignan to immediately look at creating safe reporting mechanisms outside of the chain of command. And I think that's where we need to focus. But I think we need to understand that in 2018, there was not any information about what this was. There was nothing to tell. There was no there. And I think that's very important because we look at it from today, and yes, absolutely. Can we say, could we maybe somehow have done more? I think everybody is questioning, and including Ms. Telford said that. But the fact is, we have taken steps. We need to build on those steps. And what we do know now is we need to focus on survivors. We need to focus on creating a reporting oversight mechanism outside of the chain of command. You heard Ms. Telford today give assurances of action. That is quite significant. And you've also heard the minister say Ms. Arbour's recommendations will be binding. So I think that's where the committee needs to focus.
What we need.
Let's get those recommendations done.
Okay, Mr. Bazan and Mr. Garrison, quick final words.
But what we need is, it's inherent upon us as parliamentarians to get the answers for the men and women who serve our country in uniform. They want results. They don't necessarily want more reports. And right now, there is still just so much complicity and collusion between all levels of this Liberal government, in the minister's office, in the Prime Minister's office, and we have to get those answers so that we can restore trust and confidence in the rank and file of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Okay, Mr. Garrison, quick final word, and then we have to say goodbye.
Well, it's pretty clear that the evidence at committee contradicts everything that Ms. Vandenbeld just said about people not knowing what the complaint was about. And I always remain disappointed when Madam Vandenbeld ends her comments by blaming the victim for this not going forward.
Okay, Ms. Vandenbeld, I'll let you reply to that. I'll let you reply to that.
Yeah, no, I think that giving agency and making sure that people who want to come forward have the choice of when and how and in what way they come forward is one of the most important things that we can do right now. And as I've said,
this
right
survivor
now, the best we can do is focus on the survivors.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to have to leave it there.
This survivor.
Okay. We're going to have to leave it there. Anita Vandenbeld, James Bazan, Randall Garrison, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure we'll do it again. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.